When I say Trump got nightmare news today, I absolutely mean it. Here's why. Judge Chutkan has scheduled the start of Trump's Washington, D.C. trial for March 4th, 2024, which means if the trial lasts 4 to 6 weeks, as expected, and Donald Trump is convicted, then he could quite literally be in federal prison before the 2024 election. I'm going to repeat that so it's clear. Barring any unforeseen delays with his trial, it'll be finished before the 2024 election, meaning that if Trump is convicted, he may very well find himself in federal prison by the time the 2024 election rolls around. Now, a few points to note here. If Trump is convicted by a jury, it'll be up to Judge Chutkan's discretion as to whether he's sentenced to prison time or if she'll opt for a more lenient or creative sentence, like home detention with the ability to go campaign, for example. And not to put the cart before the horse here, but the notion that he would deserve anything but prison time for the crimes that he's committed would be absurd. And I feel like Judge Chutkan would recognize that, but of course this is all unprecedented, so there are different ways that this could play itself out. If Trump is convicted, he will undoubtedly appeal, but appeals can take years, which certainly wouldn't help him in time for the November 2024 election. But again, the caveat is that this is all unprecedented, and the judges could use their discretion to grant him special treatment. But again, given the crimes he's committed and the fact that the whole point of the court system is to hold criminals accountable, I don't foresee judges undermining the very judicial process that they oversee. I would also note that this decision by Judge Chutkan isn't exactly surprising. It's only 2 months later than Jack Smith had requested, and 2 years earlier than the Trump team had requested. But remember, she was very clear in the courtroom that her decision on when to hold this trial would absolutely be impacted by Trump's behavior. She said, quote, "The fact that he's running a political campaign has yet to yield the orderly administration of justice. If that means he can't say exactly what he wants to say about witnesses in this case, that's how it has to be. Even arguably ambiguous statements from parties or their counsel, if they can be reasonably interpreted to intimidate witnesses or to prejudice potential jurors, can threaten the process. The more a party makes inflammatory statements about this case, which could taint the jury pool, the greater the urgency will be that we proceed to trial quickly." And so what did Trump do? Everything Judge Chutkan told him not to do. He lashed out at witnesses and prosecutors and judges and the city of Washington, D.C. itself, in an obvious effort to be able to then claim that he can't get a fair trial in D.C. given how hostile his relationship with the city was, even though he was the one making it hostile. So I wouldn't exactly say I was surprised to find out that Jack Smith was only 8 weeks off from the trial date he was seeking, while Donald Trump was undercut by about 2 years. And that's a point I discussed during this week's interview with Jen Psaki.
Normally, when you tell people, if his name was John Smith, first of all, he'd probably be in jail, right? That's what legal experts say, because he's already violated these things. But if he does tamper with witnesses, if he does pressure them, if he threatens them with judges, what are the consequences? We know he's going to. I wish that wasn't the case, but we know he's going to. What are the consequences? Now, Fani Willis seems like she has got no more you-know-whats to give for or tolerance for their efforts to delay, manipulate, pressure her. So maybe, I don't know. But the consequences and what the consequences are to me is the big question.
Here's
what do you
I think? I think what they could do, I think what we're most likely to see, I mean, look, as much as I think he deserves and know he deserves some type of pretrial detention, and to your point, if it was anybody else but him, they would be in a jail cell right now waiting until their trial date. I think one of the tools that one of these judges, Judge Chutkan in D.C., for example, could deploy is, right now she's contending with the question of whether this trial should be on January 2nd, 2024 or April of 2026. And meanwhile, she laid down the marker of what these conditions of his of what his release should be, and he keeps breaking them. He keeps breaking the law. He keeps tampering with witnesses, obstructing justice. I think she's going to be way more inclined to have this trial sooner, which is the last thing that this guy wants. And
she said that. I mean, she said like it will make her inclined.
Yeah.
To move it ahead.
She told him the ground rules here, and yet he still can't control himself long enough to help himself and give himself a chance to have this trial later. And so instead, I think that is going to be the main tool that we're going to see deployed. And I think we will see an early 2024 trial in the D.C. case.
So again, we shouldn't be surprised because Trump got the warning in advance. He agreed to the terms. The fact that he chose to defy the judge's conditions is not a commentary on the judge or her partisan lean. It's a commentary on Donald Trump and his inability to follow the very rules that he agreed to. So it should come as no surprise then that Trump also lashed out given today's decision. He took to Truth Social, writing, "Deranged Jack Smith and his team of thugs who were caught going to the White House just prior to indicting the 45th president of the United States, an absolute no-no, have been working on this witch hunt for almost 3 years, but decided to bring it smack in the middle of crooked Joe Biden's political opponent's campaign against him. Political interference. Today, a biased, Trump-hating judge gave me only a 2-month extension, just what our corrupt government wanted. Super Tuesday, I will appeal. Yeah, weird how the guy who was told not to jeopardize the integrity of the trial or he'd risk an earlier trial date ultimately ended up with an earlier trial date. And by the way, I get that Trump wants to frame this as being politicized because the trial is happening in the middle of his campaign, but it is not the prosecutor's fault that Donald Trump is being tried for crimes that he committed. If Trump didn't want to stand trial during his campaign, a good rule of thumb would be not to commit crimes preceding his campaign. This really isn't rocket science. Trump wants to play the victim here, but no one else is responsible for Donald Trump's actions other than Donald Trump. He also says, I will appeal. To who? The judge is in charge of this trial. It's not like he can ask Clarence Thomas to change the trial date. The decision has been made. Again, I'm certain thanks in part to Trump's own behavior, and that's it. That's why it may not be the brightest idea in the world for Trump to keep attacking everyone, but clearly, given this very post, he has no interest in learning any lessons. What do they say about the definition of insanity? And finally, it's true that the trial will begin one day before Super Tuesday, which is the day when the most presidential primaries happen at once. Is it unfortunate for Trump that his prosecution for his efforts to steal the 2020 election will be the biggest news story in America 24 hours in advance of the most voters heading to the polls? Yes, but again, that might have been something he should have thought about before he committed those crimes. Prosecutors are not going to defer to Trump's election schedule. I don't know how many different ways I can say this. If you want an open campaign schedule, do not commit crimes and you won't have to worry about the schedule being filled up with court proceedings. And when I say filled up, I mean it, because Trump is about to have a very busy first half of 2024. Remember, the Manhattan DA case regarding Trump's hush money payouts to Stormy Daniels has been scheduled for March 25th, 2024, meaning these two trials would overlap. We'll certainly see some movement in one of these trials, so it won't be an issue, but we don't know yet what that movement will look like. And then the classified documents case in Florida is set for May 20th, 2024, and of course, we don't have a trial date for Trump in the Fulton County case yet, but at least one defendant in that case, Kenneth Chesebro, will be going to trial on October 23rd, 2023, which means the Georgia trials are beginning in earnest in only 8 weeks, which may very well mean that Trump could also stand trial soon, since his co-defendants are proving out the theory that it's absolutely possible to get these trials going sooner than Trump would have liked. And this October will also be the civil fraud lawsuit brought by the New York AG's office, and then in January 2024, he'll have a second defamation lawsuit brought by E. Jean Carroll, as well as a class action lawsuit accusing Trump and his company of promoting a pyramid scheme. And as long as he remembers to bring his little punch card, I'm pretty sure that's enough for a free sandwich. So obviously things can change quickly, but as far as the DC trial being scheduled for March of 2024 is concerned, it doesn't get much worse for Trump if his goal was to delay this thing until after the election. Because now not only will he not be able to take advantage of that delay so he can rely on using the presidency to evade accountability for himself, but now it's the opposite. The fact that he's almost certain to be a convicted felon before the election will absolutely influence how voters perceive him and make it even harder for him to win the election. So yeah, almost like committing all these crimes was never a great long-term play if your goal was to stay in power. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.